Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hi, I'm Steve Heider, Chief of the Colonie Police Department. You know, our town is made up of many populations. When we look at the diverse community that we have, we especially look at the age groups of the people we deal with on a day-to-day basis. When doing that, we look at two basic populations that we feel are very vulnerable. That being the young, where we spend a tremendous amount of time working with programming so that we keep them victimless, so to speak. We make sure that they're safe, that they make those right decisions so that they're not creating a situation that casts a shadow on their whole life based on something they do very young. Our second most vulnerable population is the seniors. And in fact, our town is made up of about 30% of senior citizens. To that effect, we all have known somebody in the past who, whether by their own design or whether by people who have knowledge of them, we worry about them in terms of their driving abilities. And today it is explicitly more the point because of the fact that with a growing senior population throughout the state of New York, we are increasingly seeing problems in accident causation and in accident prevention in terms of trying to help the seniors in their motoring ability. Today, we're going to be talking about a new program that we started in conjunction with the Colonie Senior Service Centers Incorporated, and that we actually put all of our individual officers through training to give them more options in terms of what they can do if they see a senior driving on the highway that is possibly having problems with their faculties, with their judgment, or maybe be putting themselves or somebody else in danger. With me today to talk about this is Ed Neary, the Executive Director of the Colonie Senior Service Centers Incorporated, and Rory Fluman, an occupational therapist who has centered his practice on those problems involving our senior population. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be here.
Ed, if you could take a minute, a lot of people confuse the Town of Colonie Senior Resources Department with the Senior Citizens Centers Incorporated. Can you just take a minute to differentiate the two?
Yes, the Colonie Senior Service Centers is a nonprofit corporation that was formed from the Senior Resources Department 27 years ago. And our effort is to provide the services for the town of Colonie. So while we work in conjunction with the Senior Resources Department, we're not a town department, we're a nonprofit corporation. The benefit for the town is that we are able to use our fundraising ability and collaboration with other organizations to build a greater offering of services than if the town were doing it on its own.
Can you give us some examples of what your different programming points at, so to speak?
Yes, the Senior Resources Department today provides information and referral to services such as ours. And the leading service that is most in demand are transportation services. We also provide meal programs, health and recreation, and adult day programs for elderly seniors. We've recently added Umbrella of Colonie, which is a home maintenance program, and of course we've started to venture into driver fitness programs.
Okay, and we'll get to that in a minute. Rory, there are so many types of things occupational therapists are involved in. How did you become so involved with the senior population?
Sure. You know, it started being an occupational therapist working in a general rehab facility, Sunnyview Hospital out in Schenectady, New York, working with many different types of folks, whether they've had strokes or head injuries or heart attacks or, you know, those kind of age-associated disabling conditions. And I was lucky enough to work in a hospital that had a driver improvement program, meaning if you had some sort of health breakdown or health concern, how did that affect you driving a car? So it's a non-traditional area in healthcare where you have a healthcare practitioner, you know, who is trained in the body and trained in how the vision works and muscles and sensation works, but applying that to driving a car. And is somebody not safe driving a car because of their health? Is there something that you can do to help that person, whether it's a change in medication, equipment on a car, those types of things, training for a senior to have them drive safer longer.
I think it just goes to show, though, it's one more thing that we in government, in the not-for-profit sector, are looking at in terms of making it easier for our seniors to get around, to not lose that last vestige of freedom, so to speak, that they treasure so much. And the same token, we all have known seniors parents, relatives, close friends, who sometimes you look at when they get in that car and you got to cringe, not knowing if you're going to hear that sound of metal scraping when they back out of the garage.
Yeah.
Now, Ed, you called me about a year ago. We should lay out the history here.
Sure.
I should let the audience know that in the police department, the ability to train officers on an ongoing basis is very difficult. We're very fortunate. Most departments train when you come on a job, when you get promoted, and after that, you're pretty much on your own. We actually have it mandated in our department where our officers go through 5 days of training a year, 2 in the spring, 2 in the fall, then a separate range day that they do. But to find time to bring in outside individuals is very, very difficult, because with all the law changes, with all of our procedural changes, it's not an easy thing to swing an extra, you wouldn't think it, but to swing an extra hour in training is monumentous, especially if you know my training people. And when I go to them and say, you have to give me an hour,
Right.
it's like I've asked for them to go to the Antarctic and back. So Ed, about a year ago you called me.
Yes.
We talked about it. I think I probably said no initially. All right.
No, though, you always say yes.
We always say yes. But Ed, how did you get involved, and how did the senior service centers get involved in bringing this to the public?
As we always do, we look at ways that we can expand the services so that we provide for an ever-growing population in the town of Colonie, which is our primary service area. As you looked at transportation, we provide van service for medical appointments and shopping and that sort of thing. We started to think about what else can we do in transportation that helps keep some of the drivers on the road more safely and for a longer period of time. It was at that time that we started to reach out and connect with the Capital Region Older Drivers Assistance Network, and that's where we found Rory and his group already in the process of trying to raise the awareness of the issues about older drivers, especially for education. So we joined the organization, and as a result of that, we started to think about how do we formulate this into something that is actually useful for the people in the town of Colonie. And our first thought was to reach out to the police department, because we've always had great success with your department, and we've also appreciated the support that the police department has had in looking out for the seniors in this community.
Now, when you talk about the seniors, and you must know some statistics, what kind of statistics are we talking about in terms of their accident rate, in terms of the problem that we're facing in trying to get them to do preventative type of things?
Rory, you have,
Sure. They're saying by 2015, 1 out of every 5 drivers is going to be over the age of 65. In New York State alone, there's over 2 million licensed drivers over the age of 60, and over the age of 75, there are actually 750,000 licensed drivers. So, and again, it's not so much the person's age that's important. It's kind of those health changes, or what's happening in their lives that's changing their ability to safely drive that car. And so certainly having the healthcare background, knowing these statistics, and approaching groups, whether it's a seniors group or a caregiver group or law enforcement, how can we tailor interventions and presentations to help with older driver safety?
The audience should understand that, in the past, prior to us doing this program, and we think we're pretty progressive.
Yes, you are.
And matter of fact, we have someone on my staff who deals exclusively with the senior population in terms of being on different committees in town government to make sure that we are communicating with EMS, with the senior resource centers, with the senior citizen centers. But on the same token, our uniformed personnel, the people on the road, that typically the ones that either have the accidents or had the offenders, okay, didn't have a lot of choices. In other words, if they pulled someone over, whether they be 16 or 76, it was a question of, do we give that person a break and a warning, or do we give that person a ticket? And especially involving the seniors, it sort of limited what we could do, because it's, if we have a 16-year-old, we can always call their parents, tell them to come down and get their 16-year-old
Right.
and give them a lecture. When we have a 76-year-old, that's probably not going to happen. And with the amount of opportunities our officers have to make a difference, it really wasn't making a difference by issuing a ticket. Because even if we waited for a motor vehicle to possibly take somebody's license, it could be 6 months, it could be a year down the road. So, we were very receptive to the idea of what was being talked about. Although I have to admit that when we first told the officers they were going to get training in this, they looked at us with an eye of, you've got to be kidding me.
They were most respectful when they were in the training, though.
Well, that's because they have to.
They got the message.
They got the message. But Rory, what exactly goes on in the training part of it? When we did that training, it was only an hour.
Yep.
But I have to admit, we heard a lot of people talking about it, and that's important that they got something out of that hour from an outsider, and that's what they
Yeah.
refer to you as.
Yep.
You're an outsider coming into the police realm. But what exactly went on during that training?
You know, I give your officers a lot of credit, because certainly it's probably better or cooler to be at the most advanced gun or taser type training, as opposed to going and listening about senior and senior aging issues. But to their credit, everybody was great, asked good questions. But typically, what we did, we did 10 sessions of about 10, 12 police officers each, where myself and Ed Neary were there for about an hour. And specifically, we talked about, certainly not to tell a law enforcement person how to do their job, because neither Ed or I are from law enforcement, but what they might be seeing on the other side when they're approaching that senior, when they're going up to the window, things they may be seeing that could either confuse the officer or the senior themselves that's confused, maybe not used to being pulled over, maybe agitated or upset. So basically, we broke things down from a health perspective. What are typical things that happened to an aging person, an aging body, that might be a cause for some of the behaviors you're seeing? For instance, issues of vision. They say folks over the age of 65, 50% of people will start to lose vision through cataracts. Issues of glaucoma.
It happens a lot sooner than that.
Again, statistics. But there could be some sort of health breakdown, whether it's vision, physical, or cognitive reasons that a person may be momentarily having a problem driving their car, or a long-standing problem driving their car. And certainly sometimes these things can be helped, whether it's a conversation with a physician or a conversation with a family member. Oh, somebody forgot to take a medication, or those kind of things. Just really kind of bringing to the surface for law enforcement what they may be seeing, or what's behind the curtain. Why that day is that senior having a problem with their driving, and to arm the officers with just knowledge of information on issues of vision, and information on big issues of dementia or Alzheimer's, those other large issues that many seniors have. And many of those seniors are still driving with those conditions, because the fear of not driving, of losing independence, of losing their ability to be mobile in their community is a very hard thing for the senior to give up. And it almost pushes that person to drive at risk, and to not be a lawbreaker, or to do things that they've never done in their life, but to have that force on themselves to still be mobile when maybe it's not as safe as they should be doing. And law enforcement is a perfect arm to maybe assist that senior driver to be safer longer.
Sometimes, though, that's only if we can get them stopped. Historically, and I go back a number of years in the police department when I was in a regular patrol car, but there were times that we would have what we called slow-speed chases, because you turn on your lights, you'd activate the siren when you had to, and typically you don't need to do that with a traffic stop, and the people wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
And many times what it was just a very confused senior
Yeah.
who was pulling to the right like they were supposed to,
Right.
but could never in their wildest dreams think
Yeah.
that they had done something wrong.
Yeah.
And it's one of the hardest things, especially, and a generational gap does come about here.
Sure.
When one of our young officers, a lot of our patrol people are under 30 years of age,
Sure.
and they pull over a senior, especially one, say, above 70, it's sometimes very hard to get the point across of who's in charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
We occasionally get complaints from the senior population that the young officer was rude.
Sure.
When in actuality, she or he were just trying to do their job.
Right.
And trying to make a bad situation better.
Right.
Well, now that we've trained them and we gave them different options, I think a lot of what they learned, though, is that they could do something else besides just write that ticket. If you could give me a few seconds on what can our cops do when at the point of contact and afterward to help make things better?
After they've done their job, whatever they choose and whatever their instructions are, issuing tickets and referral to Department of Motor Vehicle, then we have conveyed a message and gotten that across very well, and the communication is excellent, that says there is a resource center, we call it the Driver Fitness Center, where you can refer the family, the driver, to us, and we'll sit down, because we're not law enforcement, we're simply there to help. We have built up what we think is credibility and trust with the senior community, and our effort is to try and help them through by connecting them to other services. So that could be counseling, or it could be a referral to Rory or to the VA hospital. It's a place for them to go where they can feel comfortable that all of us are trying to help them stay on the road if that's the right thing to do, or in the case where it's necessary, transition the individual from driving to some other form of public transportation.
Now, we should make the point, at your driving center, there are no police officers.
That's correct.
There is no government official there to check their license.
That's correct.
There is no big brother watching over them.
Correct.
It is just an effort to try to make things better.
That's correct.
And, you know, I know a lot of seniors, and, you know, my mother's one of them, who would probably be rather suspicious of the fact that someone was going to be looking at what she was doing. You know, I'm very fortunate. My mother decided when it was time to stop driving. You know, a lot of people aren't in that situation.
Right.
How do you handle the situation where maybe you don't get the referral from us, or maybe you do, but it also comes to a family member? How does a family member get their mother or father or aunt or uncle or associate somehow in to see you people?
The challenge for us, whether it's with the referral from the police department or the family directly, is to start to build a sense of trust and rapport. If they believe that we're working with them, that makes the conversation go much easier. If we're not judgmental in terms of whether or not they can drive or it's time for them to think about giving up the keys, the process goes much easier. So we provide them with information. We'll send it to them, let them self-learn a little bit before they come in. Or in some cases, people will simply come in and say, let me see the resources that you have. And for us, it starts a dialogue and a conversation. And that's where we're most successful, and families are most successful. The police department has done a good job in terms of getting the word out to the officers. We hear a lot from the officers. They'll connect with us and tell us that they're aware of the program. It's the general public that we hope that we're able to reach with programs like this today, that know that this service is a new one that's available in the town of Colonie. It's supported by the police department, which is tremendous to us in terms of how important it is. And they will come and start to find out that the services are there to help people, as are all the services in the town of Colonie, whether they're provided by us or the Senior Resources Department, there to help seniors remain independent and in their communities for a longer period of time.
If you could just describe the center. I mean, there are a lot of people, they may not know what to envision of what they're getting themselves into. And I know it's a lot simpler than what it sounds when you describe it as the center.
Yes, it's a very friendly environment that's located at the Beltrone Living Center at 6 Winners Circle in the south end, or what we refer to as the town senior center, the public end of the building. And it is a location in our resource lab, which has other resources available to it, where we have information that might be about how to go for defensive driving programs through AARP or AAA. There's information about how to get a referral to the Senior Special Needs Driving Program or to the VA. So we start with the conversation, and then the information that some of which we have here, flows to them on the basis of where we think the problem is going to be. So
Now,
it's a very friendly environment.
Obviously, if somebody were to contact your office, you could mail this information
Yes,
out.
and we have.
Because I
Yes.
can imagine that some people, wouldn't even want to step foot through the door
Yeah.
until they had some idea what was going on. So you do have pamphlets, you do have things that you can
Yes.
mail out to people.
And it's on the website, and people can access that information on a website, because lots of people, and particularly in the generation that we're dealing with, and even their adult caregivers, baby boomers, such as myself, like to sort of feel the information before they make a commitment to it. So we've tried to provide it in as many different ways as we can. So it's also available on our website at www.colonieseniors.org.
Okay. Now, Rory, how do you fit back into the picture? Obviously, you were
Sure.
instrumental in getting the programs going, instrumental in the training, but once Ed has done his thing at the
Right.
center, and people feel that, well, these people should be consulting more professional people such
Right.
as yourself. How do you get involved, and to what step does that process take?
Originating from, I consult with the State Office for the Aging on a project on older driver assistance networks. And this model here in Colonie is a perfect example of going out into the community and collaborating with folks who may have a vested interest in aging and driving. If you just think off the top of your head, you have the DMV, AAA, AARP, all these kind of integrated folks that have a piece of aging and driving, but it's a menu, and people may need different parts of the menu to help their senior and their family or spouse or family or friend. And so what we've done with these older driver networks or fitness centers is to kind of collaborate this information and put it in a presentable, friendly form to the senior population. Folks like myself, maybe a little bit advanced on the spectrum of driving and driving rehab, are good sources for direct referral for driving assessments. So say if there was a situation where the family wasn't sure what changes were happening with the senior driver, from a referral from a physician, we could do an actual assessment, and not a DMV assessment, but a physical, visual, cognitive assessment of a person's driving skills. And that certainly, could be a resultant effect of going into Colonie Senior Driver Center, is learning about driver rehab specialists. And, okay, I have had some nagging problems with my driving. How can I make myself drive safer longer? Maybe it's a driving safety referral.
And I think people should realize that it's to their benefit to do this first.
Right.
Because unfortunately, if an accident does initiate the program, or if a traffic ticket initiates the program, more likely than not, motor vehicle will get involved.
Right.
And you want to take care of this. You want to take the steps before it goes to motor vehicle, because motor vehicle has two choices. Either
Right.
A, let you drive, or B, forever revoke your driving privilege.
Right.
And that's a harsh way to deal with it, but as a government agency, they really don't have a whole lot of options per se.
Right.
So I think that the message here is that the availability of the center, the availability of the assessments, especially if it can be done through referral through a physician.
Yeah.
It's somewhat costly, painless, and it gives them the avenue of doing something before the problem happens.
Right.
It is unfortunate if you follow the local media. We lose quite a few seniors throughout the year to traffic accidents that were avoidable.
Right.
And that's the key thing that people should remember. We don't have typically a lot of problems with seniors doing 90 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. We have trouble with seniors who miss that red light, who miss the motorcycle coming towards them,
Yes.
who turn in front of the bicyclist. A lot of what would be relatively innocuous things that normal people would be able to avoid. We have them getting involved in that. And unfortunately, once that happens, that sets the stage of government action that we really would rather prefer to avoid.
Right.
Ed, any successes so far?
Yes, I think as an indicator of where we wanted to go with this program, that Rory has done a lot of meeting with senior groups and senior clubs. That's also true of your representatives from your community department who are out meeting with the clubs, because it's important to build that connection with this program before people get into trouble with it. So they're used to having conversations with your folks about the need to be safer on the program, and Rory's done a lot of having programs with some of the senior clubs out there. So well before they need it, people are being encouraged to pay attention to this particular situation. We have, in terms of success, we've had several referrals that came from your department of folks that have had some issues and some concerns, and we're in the process of helping them through following up on the advice that we've given them, that is to go to their doctor if we're talking about a vision issue, or to come down and let's go through an assessment of driving skills. They've all gotten information. They're all assessing that sort of thing, and we're waiting for their follow-up calls back to us to help them through the process.
And people should know it's voluntary.
Absolutely
So
voluntary.
at this stage, it's voluntary. They can get the information. They can take advantage of however much they want. Nobody's going to be compelling them.
Right.
That's correct.
It's not a question of somebody's going to be knocking on their door asking where they are.
Right.
And I think that's a key point. Now, you mentioned before, this is a relatively new thing.
Yes, it is.
How many times have we done this with other police departments across the state?
This is the first of its kind.
That's right.
I was
This
hoping
is
you
brand new.
I was hoping you were
Brand
going to
new.
say that.
Like a lot of things we do in Colonie, and
Well,
this is brand new.
it is unique, and as I said, part of the hardest problem is getting the training and getting the word out.
Right.
And as I said, in our department, just like any other department around, there's just so many training hours. And we've been very fortunate. You know, years ago we brought in people from the Alzheimer's Association, and they did a tremendous 1-hour piece. And it was the first time we'd ever brought an outsider in for in-service training. So we're kind of used to the concept. I think I explained this to you when you first called me, that we weren't adverse to the idea. Now, is there any hope of bringing this further to involve other people in the Capital District, or are there other groups like you guys that are doing this across the state?
I think there are a couple of departments or a couple of other areas. Buffalo, I think, is engaged in the process or has something similar under the way. But we're working with the State Office for the Aging to expand this through Albany County, the driver fitness centers, to bring them closer to some of the folks that are out there. So we've had encouragement from some of the other municipalities to help them get these driver fitness centers off the ground, which then becomes self-sufficient. Those areas, those municipalities, those volunteers man those driver fitness centers. So we're using this, and then our belief and our hope is to turn the program over to Rory and to Mike Paris at the State Office for the Aging and let these guys take it statewide, because we think it's a great model.
Now, our senior clubs are very popular in the town. I speak at a few of them every year, and I'm always amazed at how many people they get out.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's raining, snowing, or 100 degrees.
Yeah.
And God forbid I'm not on time, because they are ready, and you know what, you better not talk too long either.
Right.
But what is the chances of, getting one of these clubs to sign on to where it's a permanent part of their function that they offer this? Because, I envision that there's somewhat of a trust issue we've always talked about. There's that big brother issue. But is there any hope of getting the clubs themselves to take a more active role to where people that come to the meetings know it's the club that's doing it?
Yes.
And it could be much more, I would think it'd be a larger advocate for you.
Sure.
And easier to process if you had people in the clubs pushing this and not just us, per se.
That's a great idea, and I think we try to do that through peer-to-peer counseling. So a senior in a club who then becomes the go-to person in a club to talk about driving issues is a great way of doing it. In addition to that, the seniors are great communicators to the rest of the world out there. As you know, Colonie has a very large population of seniors, 17,000 or so, and who knows what that number will be in the next census, but it continues to grow, and there are lots more seniors that are coming into that revered status of senior citizen status. So the seniors who are out in the community are great communicators to the rest of the population out there who do not belong to one of the clubs, but are their neighbors on their street. So we try to utilize them in both a peer-to-peer counseling approach, but also to get the word out on the street.
Now, I know there's certain senior fairs around, there's different senior outreach things. Is that something where you're going to bring this message through to try to get it more out in the community?
Yes, absolutely. In the health and fitness fairs that we have and the Senior Resource Department has, we'll continue to do that.
Yep.
We'll continue to have the training programs with senior clubs, and we hope that your officers will continue to come out, and you'll continue to come out and meet with the senior clubs and promote the idea.
We try to. We really do. Now, Rory, though, you mentioned the Office of Aging.
Yes.
Okay, and with the state budget in the condition that it is there any funding going forward to make this easier for towns, municipalities, not-for-profits, to really get these things in the forefront?
There is. The funding stream, we receive a grant from the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee for our parent model network that is helping out the town of Colonie. And those are federal highway safety monies, similar monies that provide monies to law enforcement for click it or ticket campaigns or those kind of things. And when we first started this initiative at the State Office for the Aging 3 years ago, believe it or not, statewide across New York, there was no initiatives towards the senior drivers. It was all towards the younger driver, driving impaired drivers. And so there really was a void on a statewide level for senior type programs. So since we've been doing this in the past 3 years, the governor has identified senior drivers as one of the top 10 areas for traffic safety concerns for across the state. So the funding stream seems to be okay, just as long as the federal highway traffic safety monies, continue to be there for traffic safety programs in general. At least now we have a foothold that, hey, senior drivers are certainly a group to be funded, for education campaigns.
You'd love to see this work because, in my time in the police department, we've seen seatbelt usage, where cars didn't have seatbelts, to where they had them, to where it wasn't mandatory, to where it was somewhat mandatory, to car seats, to babies and everything like that. But one thing we see is that education works.
Yes.
And I look at it this way: we've had young people who've committed heinous crimes, but when they get in a police car, they'll put their seatbelt on. So it is it's amazing how education does work. You just need the forum to get out there.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be able to continue with the forum and promote it throughout the town, and hopefully for everybody's sake that we
Sure.
can take it more statewide.
Sure.
Well, I wanted to thank the both of you for coming today. When we look at the town of Colonie and we look at the situations that occur on a day-to-day basis, the dealing with the elderly driver is just one of many concerns that we have. But it's a great concern that we take great pride in the fact that we were one of the first departments in the state to take a very progressive look at this and try to do things in a way to help the senior keep driving rather than working to get the senior off the road. So I want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Rory.
Thank you.
Thank you
and
for
we
having
hope to
us.
see you sometime very soon.